E aí, pessoal, tudo bem? Aqui é o Ivan trazendo para vocês mais uma entrevista de baixo nível. Eu consegui um momentinho na agenda atribulada de um cara que eu adoro os vídeos dele, adoro o canal dele, aprendo um monte, que é o Billy Hume. O Billy Hume, ele é um produtor musical com mais de 20, 30 anos de experiência, também baseado lá em Atlanta, né, e na Georgia, nos Estados Unidos, e ele é um cara com bastante experiência, já ganhou Grammy, e ele me atendeu, eu entrei em contato com ele, ao comentar os vídeos dele no YouTube, ele sempre me respondia, entrei em contato com ele, e foi muito gentil e cedeu um tempo aí para a gente conversar. A gente falou de música, de produção musical, de carreiras, de escolhas, de e de como gravar o contrabaixo, com a abordagem dele para gravar o contrabaixo. A ideia aqui é sempre ter um papo, ter uma conversa, vai para um lado às vezes, não tem muito roteiro, vai para um lado, vai para o outro, e a ideia é tirar conhecimento, ser proveitoso, ser agradável. Eu espero que vocês curtam. A entrevista foi em inglês, né? Então coloquem aí a legenda, e o YouTube já liberou aí para o meu canal a dublagem automática. Vocês podem também escolher, né, ouvir direto em português se vocês quiserem, tá bom? Então, agradecer ao grande Billy Hume pela oportunidade dessa entrevista, né? Não se esqueçam de se inscrever no canal, dar um joinha, compartilhar com outros colegas que possam curtir esse conteúdo. E como sempre eu digo, né, a ideia é sempre contribuir trazendo material de qualidade para os baixistas aqui no Brasil. Então, bota o fone de ouvido aí para escutar esse papo com o genial Billy Hume. So, thank you for your time and for being available for a talk with me. And
Sure.
I'm really, I really love your videos.
Oh, thank you.
Your video are really inspiring for me. And in my YouTube channel, I'm not a professional musician. I'm a bass enthusiast. I'm and I started this channel, and one of the things that I really wanted is to bring interest in people, to present to the Brazilian audience, and also I always put subtitles in Portuguese to make it easier for my fellow Brazilians, to bass players, to know more about the guys that my guests here in my channel. Okay, and thank you so much. And that's why I wanted to introduce myself first, because we didn't have a chance to chat before. And let's start from the beginning. I would like to hear more about your how did you end up being a producer? Do you start as a musician, or that was something that you were pursuing? And how did it all came along?
Well, I got into music to be an artist because I sing and write. So I had bands and I was trying to, be a rock star and get a record deal and all that kind of stuff. But I also liked recording. I bought, when I was still in high school, when I was 15 years old, I bought a 4-track reel to reel because I wanted to record myself, like Todd Rundgren and, other people that had recorded their own music. And I started doing that and recording friends over and bands and all that. And then at a certain point, I started recording other people. And probably through my 20s up until I was 30 years old, recording other people was more of a way to make extra money so that I could pay for all the gear, because I kept having to get loans to buy the gear. And I was, playing in bands and painting houses and doing all that kind of stuff. But I ended up getting really good at recording and mixing and producing. And at a certain point, I just kept getting so many phone calls and people, just hitting me up for work. I thought, well, let me just focus on that for a while. And I only meant to do it for a few years. And it took off for, for a long time. And it's only now that I'm kind of swinging back to working on my own music again. but it really was just more of a, I was just good at it, and people found out. I wasn't actually trying to be a producer and a mixer for as a career. It was just something that happened because I was good at it.
Oh, that's great. That's great. And did you had any mentorship, or you just
No,
was hanging around in studios and asking, making interesting questions?
no, you got to realize, like, back then, I'm a little older. There was no YouTube. There was no way to really learn. A lot of school, there weren't that many schools to learn this stuff. A lot of universities, because I graduated high school in 1981 and I did not go to college because I wanted to focus on music. There weren't a whole lot of courses in colleges. Not that I would have gotten in, because I got bad grades anyway in high school and I wasn't planning on going. I tried to go to some other studios, but it was a lot different back then. It was actually hard to get into a lot of them. And so nobody would actually let me come over and hang out at their studio. They just, I don't know, maybe they just, I don't know. The fact of the matter is, I've never actually seen somebody mix a song. I've never actually worked with a mixer. I saw one guy mix for 5 minutes. A guy named Ron Christopher, who'd done a bunch of rock stuff back in the day, and I happened to walk in the control room. I was at a studio that I was working at. This guy was letting me have some studio time to work on my own stuff, and I walked in and watched for 5 minutes, and then he kicked me out. And that's all I ever saw. That's it. That's my whole experience. And I never really worked in a studio. I basically had to teach everything to myself, just like figuring it out as I went.
And the music scene where you were living, it was always in Georgia area, Atlanta area?
By the time I got serious about it, yeah, because I moved to Atlanta when I was like 14 or 15 years old, and there wasn't much going on down here back then. It didn't really start picking up till the 90s. That was another thing too. Like Atlanta back in the day, there wasn't hardly anything going on here. Not like now at all. It was considered a joke to be from Atlanta back then, because I had bands in the 80s and we did get a little attention from record labels, and went to New York for a couple meetings. Nothing big ever happened, but everybody thought it was funny that we were in Atlanta. They couldn't imagine, why would you stay in Atlanta if you're doing music, And now it's different, but back then it was.
Yeah, especially in the 90s. 90s, Seattle was the thing, of course, New York, LA.
Yeah.
And of course, all the country.
I got to the point where I would lie to people and tell them I was from somewhere else, because they just thought Atlanta was funny. Like, oh, why Atlanta? Yeah, it was a very, very, very different world back then. But I had my reasons for staying, and I knew if I went to New York or Nashville or something like that, I'd just be another number in a big crowded world. And I also had a good setup here, because I had bought a house and turned it into a studio, the Zone, which was where most of my big records were done. I'm in a different studio now. This is a different location. I still have the other studio. Somebody else lives there now and uses that studio. But it was like, yeah, I got a good setup here. And the other thing was, my dad had told me in the late 70s, because we moved to Atlanta in 1978, and I remember my dad saying, someday Atlanta's going to be one of the most important cities on earth. And I'm like, but my dad turned out being right about a bunch of stuff. So by the time I started really getting into the studio thing, I thought, I think I'm going to remember what my dad said and just kind of hold out a little while. And he was right, because it was a good thing for me, because by the time Atlanta blew up, I was already established. Everybody in town knew I was the guy with this cool home studio and that I did good work. So when things started to blow up, I was just sitting. It was just like I build it and they will come, sort of thing. I was ready, and the world came, and I was sitting there ready to go.
And do you think Atlanta attracted artists from that era of the states, and for example from, I don't know, Florida, but South Carolina?
Everywhere. I mean, like, I'm trying to remember when this happened. It might have been the late 90s, and talking to somebody and them saying, oh, I moved to Atlanta to do music. It was, hip hop stuff. Nobody had ever said that before. In the past, it'd always be somebody leaving Atlanta to do music. But I met somebody and said, oh, I moved to Atlanta to do music. I was like, oh, wow. And then people started moving here to not only do music, but like have studios or work in the record business or something like that, because labels started opening up offices here. And so, yeah, people were coming from all over. I mean, I met people from other countries that moved here to work on music.
Oh, that's nice. Didn't know that. And how you in some of your videos you emphasize the importance that of other soft and perhaps sometimes hard skills together, and not only talent. And you don't only let me rephrase, being a, a good musician, it's not enough, to thrive in this business, especially if you go into the level like a producer, mixer. And this was something that you also learned on the fly. So to dealing with people, to managing uh, the artists, their ideas, how they bring their ideas to you. How did you uh, how can I say that? How did you develop those skills through your career?
Um, I never actually
Because
realized.
sorry to interrupt, because today there are coaches
Yeah.
teaching every single comma of a sentence. It's now everybody's expert in a little something. But back in the
Yeah.
day, you have to figure out by yourself.
I used to believe that the only thing that mattered was being good. As long as you were good, you were going to make it. So I kind of based a lot of my ideas on that. I was going to be the best songwriter, the best band leader, the best mixer, best engineer, even though I wasn't trying to be a professional mixer or producer, but for myself, and I always wanted to be the best at everything that I did for my own reasons, but also because then people would hire me. But at a certain point, pretty early, I would meet people who were great musicians that couldn't get anything happening. Like, and a lot of times it was just their personality. They were just not nice people, or they were just not easy to get along with. And I realized over time that you have to be good, but you have to, like, I don't know, just be cool and be fun. I never really thought about it that much, but I think the main thing is, like, talent isn't enough. You have to be able to get along with people. You have to return phone calls. You have to finish things. You have to get things done. You need to show up on time. It's pretty basic stuff. And it's amazing how
Really
people
basic stuff.
get caught up in a bunch of other stuff, and it's like, hey, it's pretty basic. The number one thing is show up, hopefully on time, get the work done, return phone calls and emails, which I'm actually kind of terrible at sometimes, but I've gotten better. But the number one thing is letting people know that you will finish things. That's the number one thing. It's amazing how many people work on stuff, and I've got records on hard drives and reel-to-reel tapes back here that are masterpieces that nobody's ever heard because the artist never put it out. It's crazy. Or just maybe they kind of put it out and then just never did anything. They just kind of dropped it. And it's I think people think that things will magically happen, but it's just a numbers game. You just got to do a lot of stuff, a lot of work, and you got to you put something out, you keep pushing it. Or if you're a producer or mixer, you got to do a lot of different projects over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. And I think that seems kind of, to a lot of people, like something that seems a little depressing, like, oh, I got to do all that much work. But I'm like, look, are you in this for the money, or are you in it because you love what you do? Because if you're doing it because you love what you do, then doing it over and over and over again should be a joy. You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of like, for me, I work every day still now, and I work really long days. And I do have a lot of things I'm trying to do with my YouTube channel and all that, but I actually enjoy what I do as long as the people are cool. And I'll work a really long time just because I love to create. And it's not just music. I do woodwork. I do all sorts of things as long as I can be creative. And it just doesn't matter whether I'm mixing or producing or writing or playing or whatever. Just the fact that I get to create, it's what I do all day. And now it's filming. I like filming, and I'm good at editing. I don't necessarily enjoy it because it's hard work, but I'm good at it. But there's something that I get out of the creation deal of make something that I can put out so people can see it. I like that. So if you're in this for the fame and the money, good luck, because it's a lot of work. You'd better enjoy it, because it's going to be a lot of doing the same thing over and over again.
Yeah. When I talk to producers or professional musicians that I had already interviewed here in my channel, it's always it's so good to hear this, because I'm not a professional musician. I'm a professor at the university here, and I work on research, and I have my students, and each one of them have their own research project, and they have to finish. They have to get the job done. They have to show up on time. It's a 2-year, 4-year work. Have to get along with them. There are so many basic skills that sometimes we feel that people are forgetting to nourish, to invest this, because I believe social media became. I'm not advocating against social media, but it creates a false perception that being good at it and be good on the screen, on a photo or a video, short video, it's enough to prove your value, or that will guarantee you contracts or opportunities. And in the end, people will call your next employee will call your previous employer, and will ask, how is he? How is she? And so this is interesting. It's something that I always talk to my colleagues here.
The other thing that's important about building a career or even building your life is that you got to be careful about having too many preconceived notions. And I'm going to compare this to working on a song. Often when people come in the studio, whether it's I'm producing somebody or it's one of my songs, you start off with this idea of a song, and it's like, oh, this is going to be a rock song. This is going to be like blah, 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 blah. And you got these ideas, and then there'll be a guitar solo, and then this will happen. But what happens sometimes is you get in, you start working on the song, and things happen, and the song goes in this other direction. And what I've found is that it's best to let the song lead the way. Don't force it into this preconceived notion. Let the song lead the way. And the best stuff I've ever worked on was something like that, where we just let it go where it's gonna go. I'll compare that to life. A lot of people start a career like me. Oh, I'm going to be a rock star. And I tried, beating my head against the wall. And then it was like, man, a lot of things are pointing me towards being a mixer and producer. I guess I'll go with that. But also like how you present yourself, like even this YouTube channel. When I started this YouTube channel 5 years ago, I had an idea about what it is. And if you go back, I've got all my videos are still up there, and some of the earlier ones I don't think are that good, but I left them up there because I think it's good for people to kind of see the progress. And I kind of started out with a different idea of what I was going to do and what I was going to talk about, but also how I presented myself. And that changed over time. The other thing was about, you got to be sincere, and you got to be yourself. Well, I thought I was being myself when I started the videos, but as I started looking at them, I'm like, I think I'm kind of doing an impersonation of myself without really realizing it. So as time went on, I realized that some of my original ideas were not working, and I was getting reactions on different types of videos, but also the things that I felt good about. So that the channel and the kind of videos I did started to veer in a different direction. It's another example of going in a different direction than what you thought it should be, and what people tell you it should be. Because everybody kept saying to me, do short videos and just sit there and talk to the camera. But my best videos have been the ones with the most views and the best reaction are the videos where I'm doing a lot of editing. They're longer. There's a lot of detail in them. People are like, oh, it's too much work. It's like, well, that's what I do. And those are the videos that the people like the best. So I hadn't been doing them much lately because I've been doing some recording projects and producing some people, but I think I'm going to be doing more of those videos in the future because that's, especially this year, that's what everybody's been liking. So that goes against my original idea of the channel and what everybody was telling me. And you got to be careful about taking advice because you should listen to advice, but sometimes advice can be wrong. And you always got to be a little suspicious of people's advice for a lot of reasons. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, sure. For example, I loved your video. You're not alone. You know, this video when it was amazing. It was amazing. It's hard to talk about some things on YouTube today and to show some of your views of, you know, but in the end, I think that's when you make a connection with the audience. And this is, people can say a lot of things, but recently I was approached by a bass guitar company. In fact, it was the importer here in Brazil, and he asked me to make videos for this specific brand. And in the end, the guy said, "Man, you are so real on the camera. Perhaps because you're a professor, you're a teacher, you teach classes, so for you it's very easy to go in front of a camera and talk." And it was not my intention, but my YouTube channel, I do mostly reviews of bass gear, and became a library for people looking for new instruments, equipment in Portuguese. I record all the equipment the same way. So in the end, they always made say, "Ivan, I love the way you talk. It was so honest. It was so direct to the point, and you can see that you love playing, you love instruments, you're not selling the brands A or B, and you know, and I think that's the secret sauce. If you try to be someone that you're not, you know, and in the video, this is very evident. You know, you can see it right away. And in music, how can you extract the real artist whose music? And you see when the artist is not being himself in what he's presented to you the first time he came to your studio?
I think, yeah, it's actually making me think of somebody that I worked with a few years ago. He was doing country music, and he was good, great voice, nice guy, pretty good songs, but nothing ever really clicked. And he was singing songs about, you know, country music. I'm drinking whiskey and all this kind of stuff. The guy hardly drank, you know. He was like singing these songs based on Hank Williams and stuff that he'd heard, but it wasn't really him. And then when COVID hit and he was home more because he'd been touring a lot, and he and his wife were having like babies and stuff, he started writing songs about his kids and his family and being a dad, and they were amazing. And it was like, that was the thing that he should have been doing. And I feel like that's the mistake people make, is like, I do think there's some people that can fake it and just say, hey, I'm just going to make a song and it's like this and it works. But most people can't. And the public will sniff out a fake, whether they realize it or not. People will sense when something's not real. And I can say that every single song I've worked on that was a hit song was based on honesty. If you think about the Yin Yang Twins and their party songs, that is who they are. That is, you know, they are some, like, what you see, that is it. That is absolutely it. And that's been true for everybody I've worked with that's had any success. They're not faking it. You know, when I started working on rap music and having a lot of hit records, I'd have these other people come in that were trying to have a career. So they'd come in and they would be basically copying Lil Jon and all that kind of stuff. And it sounded pretty good. And I'd get to talking to him and I'm like, oh, so what do you do? And he's like, oh, I'm a middle school teacher. I'm like, oh, interesting. We go outside and he's driving a minivan. Nothing against that. I got a minivan. And my wife's a teacher. But it's like, yeah, but unless you're going, like, you can't really pull that music off unless you're really really living the lifestyle to some degree. You know, you gotta be in it. And another example would be Lil Jon. And Lil Jon, when I met him, he was working at a record label. He was a professional. He was doing A&R. But he did go to the clubs. But he would also spend a lot of time basically researching what people were doing. So he would have a friend take him down to the hood and hang out at parties and like, just take me where people are at. And he spent a lot of time just being in that world so he could actually understand it and experience it. Not that he didn't. He was a DJ, so he'd worked in clubs his whole life. But to stay really up on the trend, because as he was moving up in the business, he was becoming more isolated. He was in the record. He was working at Soso Def, which is a record label. So to make sure that he didn't lose that touch, he made a point of going to parties and events and just spontaneous things that were a little under the radar, but more closer to the street and what was really going on in culture. So the point being is, sincerity always does matter. It really, really does. And also, the other thing is that all the songs I worked on that were hit songs, people were definitely trying to have a hit song, but that wasn't actually their primary goal. Their primary goal was to either create something that they wish existed, because like, I don't really hear anything like this, or to kind of quote unquote solve a problem. Much the same way that people who are inventing a new technology or starting a new software business, like one of the prime things they say, like, oh, if you want to start a software business, what problem are you solving or what are you trying to improve? I think the same applies to music. So if you think about Lil Jon, the kind of music he was doing, and all those guys back then, I think we never really talked about it, but they were trying to make something that they felt was an improvement on the rap that was out there now. They felt like, well, it could also be party music at a club, which it wasn't really quite like that before. So they were listening to other types of music like rave and dance music and electronic music and incorporating those elements into what became crunk. And I think that their way of looking at it is like, well, how do we make something that we down here in the South will like more? Also the way the drums sounded, because if you think about New York hip hop and other places, like the low end wasn't as big, whereas in the South, the low end was big. And why is that? Well, if you live in New York City, you're not driving around in a car. You probably don't even own a car. So you're probably listening on earbuds or headphones or something like that. But in the South, we got a lot of space. We're driving around in cars. So you can put this big woofer back there and just blow it so you can hear it a mile away. You can't do that in other cities. So I think part of it was like, well, how do we represent that in the music? So that was where I came in. I love low end, and it's like, well, I have some techniques that I did, and we'll just blow that stuff up. But also the way the music was produced, it needed to be a slower beat with more space in it in order for those 808 drums to hold out. It couldn't be like the super fast stuff. If you really want it to have this big low end, you need the space for the longer notes. I don't think any of this was necessarily something that was consciously planned out. It just happened naturally because that's what people wanted to do. But it all came from a place of sincerity and something that they really believed in. It wasn't just like, oh, let's go have a hit. Let's make up something. Let's follow something. No, that's what they wanted to do. And that's what they did. And it worked. And I think that's true for any kind of music that's successful.
And you as a producer, do you think you feel the need to, for example, as you mentioned, go to the hood also, or you need to be someone a little bit more outside to have a broader...
Good question. So for me, when I started working on rap music, I had no idea what was going on. I didn't know anything about rap music. Now,
challenging.
The thing that was interesting though is I liked low end. So I think my situation was a little unique. I was doing a lot of rock bands in the 90s, and I was getting really sick of it. I hated working with rock bands because in the 90s everything was just like nobody wanted to be grand. You know, nobody wanted to be proud of what they were doing. Like in the 90s, the whole idea is like, no guitar solos, and we're too cool to like want to sound good or whatever. You know what I'm saying? There's this whole attitude in the 90s that I kind of hated, like, oh, we can't be too good. And there'd be a lot of resistance to making the record sound big. I wanted to make big sounding records, and the rock bands were afraid of low end. And then I started working on rap music, and it's a whole weird story how I even got into it. But right off the bat, I was like, oh, they'll let me do anything, and at least they're open to trying. And instead of having conversations about it and debating it, any of the rap guys, if I came up with an idea, they're like, give it a shot. Like, yeah, go ahead. You could always say no, but usually said yes because I wanted things to sound really, really big. And because I was an outsider, I also came in with other techniques that they'd never seen before. So I was like with Lil Jon when we were doing, like, say, Put Your Hood Up, which is one of his big songs. He wanted to stack the vocals and just build it up, build it up, build it up. And he'd done it before in other studios, so they'd be him and the East Side Boys, so there'd be 3 guys on a microphone, and they'd stack it 8 times. So that's 8 times 3 is, 24? Is that right? So there'd be 24 vocals chanting something. But when I did it, I was thinking of Queen. So Queen would stack vocals, and they would do it like 100 vocals, right? So first time I ever did that with Lil Jon, they thought I was crazy. It's like, no, keep going, keep going. And we were working on ADAT. So we were stacking and then bouncing down, second and bouncing down. And they're like, okay, and it was taking a long time. So on Put Your Hood Up, I think there's like 120 individual voices on some of these chants by the time you add it all up. They'd never heard anything like that. Nobody had ever tried that. But in my background, I was like, oh, yeah, we do that in rock. Like, think about Queen and how huge these vocals were. So I was coming in with these ideas. And they're like, yeah, that's great. So I think that worked. But as a producer in general, yeah, I do feel like there's a balance between you've got to have an understanding of the genre that you're working in. But on the other hand, if you're too inside that genre as a producer, it could be bad. It depends on the artist. Like if you're working with an artist that just wants to fit in and be some cookie cutter stuff, and there's a whole marketing plan and whatever, maybe that's the thing to do. Find a producer who's like been doing country music all their life. But if you got an artist that's a little bit different, maybe somebody like me is good because I've worked in a lot of different genres and I'm always kind of doing this other thing over here. I do need to understand the genre enough to kind of know like what the record should generally sound like where the vocals should sit, and just, other like formats of the song and stuff like that. But I do feel like the producer needs to can come in with some different ideas and kind of push the artist to step outside of what they normally do, because sometimes there's some real magic there when they do that instead of playing it safe.
That's
Oh, your mic turned off. I think you might have. Yeah, there you go. Oh, wait, I'm still not hearing you. Wait, did I do something? Kind of mic here. Hello, check, check, check. I'm seeing audio. Yeah, no, your mic is off.
Is it working?
Oh, there you go. There you go.
Thanks. Great. I can cut this. That's great to hear. That's great to hear. And you mentioned low end. And as a bass player, I'm pretty interested about how do you get this not only recording the bass, that sometimes it's something that seems to be very simple, just plug through a DI. And but also I don't know how do you approach this, also putting together with drums and other instruments.
Well, boy, yeah, because my wife said you're going to ask about bass, and I'm thinking, ooh, that's a big subject. I'd say on low end in general, you got to think about the physics of sound. Low end frequencies like bass, they're big waveforms. Like literally, if you measure a waveform, and I can't remember the exact number of feet, I need to look this up, but if you're playing like a really low note, the waveform could possibly be 20 feet long. Like literally from the time it goes up, comes down and back up, it's the waveform's literally as long as your room, which is huge because that means that any other sound in the mix, in the production that also has low end, these big waveforms are going to possibly clash and may not work together. They can phase out. The higher frequencies, these waveforms are like, you know, you can put a bunch of them up there and you can mix them all up. It's fine. So if you think about the way I think about working on a song, whether I'm producing or mixing, is I try to make sure that there's only a couple things in the low end: kick drum and bass for the most part. Sometimes in certain situations you might have a keyboard, and I'll high pass filter a bunch of stuff. I know a lot of people say you shouldn't do that, but I do because I just think it sounds good. Oh, you're causing phase shift. Whatever, man. I'm just clearing up the low end. A lot of my mixes, if you take out the kick drum and the bass, it's like, oh, whoa, mix sounds kind of thin. But the whole low end is being carried by a couple instruments, so it's very clean and very powerful. So you got to I spend a lot of time looking at phase or polarity, you know, the direction that the waveform is going in compared to the kick drum. So with rap music, I would literally go through every kick drum and 808 to make sure that they're lined up the right way. And you can sometimes do it visually by just looking at the shape of the waveforms. That doesn't always work. Even if they're lined up perfectly, maybe it sounds a little better if one's kind of shifted, but I would figure that out. And if it was a pitched 808, one that changed tones, so it's like boom, 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 it would be a different alignment for each note. So I'd literally sometimes break up the 808 onto different tracks and shift it with the kick drums. Like, okay, when he hits that note, it sounds better with the kick drum here. And typically 808s and bass guitars always sound better, not only sonically, but feel-wise, if the bass is slightly behind the drums, just a little bit. And it's something that I did for years just because of working with bass players. I was always, I like the way the bass sounds when the guy's playing behind the beat. But over time, I realized, that's why people sidechain the bass. You'll always hear people say, I always sidechain my bass. Well, why? Because if the kick drum and the bass hit at the same time, there's just too much low end and it could phase and all that. But it's because everybody just records everything on grid. Everything's on the same beat. If you just take your damn bass part and slide it back a little bit, it's literally the same as side chaining, meaning it puts it out of the way of the kick drum, but you don't lose the attack. Because if you're side chaining the bass, it's turning it down for a split second at the beginning of the note, and then it comes afterwards. But then you're killing, especially if it's a regular bass, like a bass guitar or stand-up bass, or even a synthesizer, you just killed the initial attack of the bass. I never thought about this till like literally recently. It's like, because I just do it instinctively. But if you slide it back a little bit, then you preserve the attack of the bass sound. And we're only talking about, I don't know, a few milliseconds, sometimes 15 milliseconds.
And what you're saying is not exactly what we sometimes expect some bass players do, that play a little bit behind. You're not saying the same thing, or are you?
Yeah. Having the bass player who plays behind the beat.
Because there are some bass players that will listen to the click track and will play slightly behind a bit.
Yeah.
And normally, if the guy don't delivers that, you can just
exactly
put it back
exactly. It's also and it is a slight bit of physics too, because a bass note, when you hit it, like if you hit a triangle, for instance, bing, the sound's just there instantly. You hit a bass, especially the lower notes, there's a split second, you hit it, and then it goes, woo. You know what I'm saying? So there's actually a natural delay anyway. But to me, it's just a better sound, you know? Maybe not in all cases, because there's a couple bass players I've worked with, and when I look at the waveforms, they're actually ahead of the drums, but it sounds great too. So I'm like, that's cool too. But point being is I spend a lot of time not with EQs at first. I look at the primary performance and what the instruments are doing and what's going on, and phase and polarity, before I look at any EQ. I look at all that stuff first. And sometimes it's just about switching the polarity on something and you're halfway there, you know. A lot of people overlook that stuff and they start trying to go in and EQ stuff right off the bat or whatever. I spend more time looking at phase and polarity and then where the tracks sit. I'll move stuff, even as a mixer. It's not necessarily always my job. I'm just supposed to mix it. But a lot of people don't know how to produce, or that they don't really know about this stuff. So I'm like, man, if I can make it sound better, I'm going to nudge the bass part back. I just don't say anything about it. Nobody's going to, in most cases, people don't know. All they want is the record to sound good. Sure. So those are the things I look at first before I start looking at plugins and stuff like that. Oh, and I was going to talk about the bass. So as far as electric bass, that's all over the place. That can matter. Like, I don't really have one way, like there's certain things I'll do on an electric bass guitar, but it really comes down to the player. How good are they? Do they have an active EQ bass, active electronics, active pickups, or is it passive pickups?
Pick, use
are they
style.
playing with their fingers or a pick or whatever? And it just, so what the main thing with bass for me when I record electric bass is I do as little as possible. I go into a DI. Sometimes I'll do an amp, but mostly I go into a DI and I get a good level and I just record that, because I already know it's going to be like, there's going to be a lot of issues I got to look at in the mix and I don't always know what they're going to be. So I just try to record as clean a signal as possible. Sometimes I'll hit the preamp a little bit hard, but I stopped compressing bass guitars going in many years ago, because I'm going to do it in the mix, but you don't know what you're going to get. And a lot of times the bass player, as he gets into the song a little bit, if he's doing multiple takes, he'll change a few things and the tone can change. There's a million things. So I just plug it into a DI and I'll either use, like, I've got a Universal Audio 710 mic pre here. I've got these, I actually like the Avalon VT737, which people mainly use for vocals. Love it on bass.
Right.
Just record it in. But on stand-up bass, like what you got sitting behind you there, that's a whole other thing. And I've actually got a video where I talk about that. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Hold on one sec. Oh, here, let me go down. It's about a year or two old. Okay.
Mommy,
whoops. I think this is the right one here. And I think I can send you a link. And I don't know if you've seen this one. Now, it's not just about bass. It's actually a band I recorded. But I do have a section on bass here. Yeah, I think this is the one.
I can add here if you want.
Yeah, hold on.
What's the name of the
video?
video?
Yeah. Okay, it's called How to Record Acoustic Instruments with
with mics.
Yeah.
We have here two free mics.
All right, I just sent you a link to this. And I might have another video, but in this one, I feel like there's a section kind of early on in the video. That's actually the first thing I talk about. And I talk about recording, this is up in Nashville, and I talk about recording a stand-up bass. And it kind of goes over the basics of this, of how I record stand-up bass. Did you get it?
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, check that out. That would be, maybe put it in the, the description of the video or something like that. I think that's a good video. I felt like I did a good job of explaining it. Yeah, go about 54 seconds in and you'll see.
Can you hear the
I can't hear that.
Okay.
Oh, no. Oh, you're going way too far. Just go in about 54 seconds. It's literally the first thing. think it was 54 seconds. Yeah, about a minute in, and I talk about the oh, there you go. Yeah, so it's showing the microphone I use, and I explain some things, and a lot of detail about that. It's one of the hardest things to record and one of the hardest things to get right, because as you know, every stand-up bass is completely different. It's the tone, the response, the volume is going to be different on different strings, on different places on the neck. The room makes a difference. It's the hardest thing to record. You always got to make sure that when the bass player goes and does the second song, that the bass is in the same spot. So I'll literally get him to stand, and I put tape on the floor where the stand, like the little thing coming out of the bottom of the bass I put tape where their feet need to be. So there's, okay, you need to stand here. Don't move. You know, I take that stuff down. I put weights on the mic stands. I measure things, because once I get that sound, I don't want it to change, especially with multiple mics. And once again, I don't compress any of this going in, because I'm gonna do some in the mix. You just don't know what you're gonna get. It's the hardest thing to record a mix well.
Interesting. Yeah. And so the goal is to get the best clean sound possible, and then later you can
and in that particular situation, I was using 3 mics. I had the Neumann M149, which I show in the video. I had a small diaphragm condenser up at the top. I can't remember what I had, but I also had one of the sound sound trumpet labs, or trumpet, I forget what they're called, but you'll see it there on the strings. It's actually attached to the strings below the bridge. It's called a Nadine microphone.
Here.
Those things are amazing. They're mostly made for live. They don't, that mic there, it doesn't have a ton of low end, but it picks up that nice lower mid. Like if you know what it's like when you're standing next to an acoustic bass and you're playing, the sound that you get, it's hard to get. I hardly ever hear anybody really nailing that on a recording. That mic does it. If you can blend that with the other mics, that mic, when you listen to it by itself, you're like, but you put it with that other mic, and it's like, oh, yeah, great mic.
Yeah, and you can get the and also the attack.
Yes.
Yeah, that's that seems to be really hard. We've been talking about techniques, and you're experiencing recording different technique, different approaches to record electric, to record different acoustic
I'm sorry, your mic cut out
again.
Well, actually, I might have been the internet connection.
Okay, let me see. It's better now. Can you hear me now? Yeah. Okay. So with all those techniques and which is directly associated with you trying to capture, to record the sincere art of the artist. How do you see this? It's hard to escape from this question. This new AI technology, Suno, and other stuff. You are also involved producing and creating scoring, music, film scoring, and this demands a lot of creativity. But today, with these new technologies, do you think this is a threat?
Yeah, I mean, it is. It is. I've got some clients, people that I do consulting with, just for like mixing and also, filming and stuff like that do ambient music and scoring work and all that, and they're worried about losing their work, because that kind of music, it's something the public hears, but they don't see the artist, so it's easier to replace them, and it's kind of background music. So some of those guys are kind of scrambling right now. I do know that it's going to take away a lot of work from people. Frankly, I think it's evil and AI is trained on other people's work. It's basically copying everything that we've done. I think it's a terrible thing, and I know how people can use it as a tool to help them write and all that, but it's gonna be a terrible thing. But is it the end of music? I don't know. I feel like, and I could be wrong, but I feel like AI will almost be like in a way another genre, meaning some of the public won't care. They're just going to listen to whatever. And I do think big music companies like record labels and all that, I think they're going to lean on AI because they're not going to have to pay artists because they're greedy assholes. Sorry, you might have to beep that out, but you're going to have like Spotify and all that. Yeah, they're going to lean into AI because then just keep all the money and they'll just screw the artists. However, there is other ways to get your music out, and of course, live performance. I just feel like people will care, and there are going to be some people who are going to insist on real people and real music. And if you can build a following, people will follow that. I mean, it's just like, I don't know. Who knows? Maybe it'll be the end of everything. But I remember, it's not the same thing, but I do remember people predicting the end of live musicians when drum machines came out and all that. And this is certainly way beyond that. But I always kind of have this attitude is like, it's like I said earlier. I decided this is what I was going to do. And I do it all the time. And my attitude is like, I'm just going to keep pressing forward because you don't really know what's going to happen. I hear people say things like, well, I was going to start writing songs, or I was writing songs and I quit because of AI. I'm like, don't do that. Keep going. You know, it's like you have no idea what's going to happen in the future. And this whole AI thing, it's scary, but it's also very new. And maybe it doesn't turn into what we think it is. I don't think it's going away, but that doesn't mean all human music is going to go away. I would hate to see somebody give it up and then 10 years from now, let me give you an example. For a long time, back in the 80s and into the 90s, there weren't, like, when drum machines really started coming out, everybody started using them. So I went for years and years and years where I didn't ever record live drums. And then started coming back. And now it's like everybody wants live drummers. That's why I turned my living room into a drum room up there, because I got big ceilings and a lot of space and all that. And it's like one of the things that sets me apart, that I can record live drums. And if I can get live drums on a song, people really, really want it. And I know guys that are now doing a lot of work as, you know, touring, but also doing studio work. It didn't go away. People literally want a human to come in and put their interpretation on a song and do a good drum take. But the same thing with live music. There was a period of time where live music wasn't, I mean, it's always been around, but in the last, I don't know, 10 years, or I don't know how long, over the last 10 or so years, people have a real thirst to go see live music, more than when I was younger. I'll say that for sure. And I think it's because our world has become so technological, where we're at home, we don't interact with people so much, and that people really want to have a real experience with other humans. And some of my clients tour all the time, and they're doing pretty well. I mean, prices are up, but as far as their fans, sure, they got fans. Fans will travel around. Fans will fly, get on airplanes to go see them play at different shows and stuff like that. And it's because it's a real human thing, and it kind of surprised me when it started blowing up, like the live show thing. It's just because, like, oh, people do want that connection. I think the same thing will happen with music. That's my prediction. AI is not going to go away, but you can still carve your place out in the world if you're making something that people like, and if you can connect with them. And so I can't really, how do I know? Who the hell knows what's going to happen? But all I can say is I'm not stopping. I mean, what else am I going to do? I could go back and paint houses again, I guess, you know, maybe. But I don't really want to paint houses. I think I want to work on music. So I'm going to stick with it. I'm sticking with it. That's my position.
As an educator, we have been discussed this a lot in the university, with the use of AI by students, and of course by the educators themselves. And you know, in the end, it's just like here in Brazil, you can have a health insurance, or you can schedule a doctor appointment, and if you go, if you have a health insurance, your appointment with the doctor will last 5-10 minutes maximum. But if you pay for the appointment directly to the doctor, you will pay like almost $100 for the appointment, and he will stay with you for 1 hour talking about your life, being holistic. I think in the end will be like this, and people who have money to pay for the real thing will continue to consume the real thing, and the low quality stuff will be real cheap. So this will define a little bit the market, I guess.
Yeah.
If you want a live musician performing in a venue or big shows, whatever, you have to pay for it. So in the end, I believe the working musicians and producers, they will have to learn how to navigate this new world, where the money is, to put their talent and their workforce towards where the money is, because otherwise the AI will suck up those little jobs, the easy things, the tingles, and this.
It's about being adaptable. Like, I was adaptable. So when rap music came out, when rap music started blowing up, I remember, because I was told by people, certain particular very well-known producers and YouTubers, that's all I'm going to say, I knew those people back in the day, and they told me I was throwing my career away by working on rap music. And they were wrong. It blew up, and then they didn't have any work because suddenly rap became, for years and years and years, was the primary thing. So it was harder to make money doing rock and roll and all that. I didn't get into the money. I just got into it because I thought it'd be fun, and I ended up making really good friends with Bone Crusher and Little John, and I just liked them. But I was adaptable. I had to teach myself a different sound and different ways of working, but also just like people skills with guys I'd never hung out with, those kind of people. I'd never hung out with guys from the hood before. I grew up on army bases. My dad was in the army, and it's a different world. And I thought, oh, these guys are cool, but you still got to learn what they're like. But also I moved into country music at some point, and then I went and did bluegrass. I also moved from being an engineer into being a mixer, and that is a bigger jump than people realize. But moving from being a mixer into more producing was also a big jump. There's a lot of differences in the skill sets, but also how you deal with people and how you think about what you're doing. So I've been adapting this whole time. I've had very few times. I think the longest I've ever been able to stay in one spot was like maybe 3 or 4 years, when I was mixing a lot of rap music. Things weren't really changing that much technologically. I had a lot of work. Certain artists were kind of popular. The culture of music and what was popular kind of stayed the same, but things started to change, especially with the internet coming out and sales going down. The music came out of it. I ended up making a lot less money, but I had to adapt the way that I work in my lifestyle so that I could survive, constantly adapting. So I ended up for a while making a lot of music videos. I bought a camera, so I was making money doing music videos. And yeah, and then also teaching, and on the side, I do private lessons and stuff like that. But I think it's the same thing with AI in the future. Who knows what's going to happen? The main thing is you got to be adaptable and just not give up, because you never know. You never know what's going to happen.
Yeah. And how do you see yourself in 5 years to 10 years? That's a tricky question, I know, but do you have a goal? You are a Grammy Award winner, so you don't have to prove anything to anyone. You have fantastic career,
Well,
and
I think, there's a couple goals. I think my main goal is to grow the YouTube channel. I mean, there's always work out there. I can always get work, but I've been doing it for years and I love it, but I like challenges. Also, I got into the music business to be a performer. And I never really thought about that until I started like doing the YouTube channel, and I live stream a lot, although I'm not going to be this next month because I got to focus on some other videos and things like that. But live streaming brought back this whole performance element to me. And so I want to grow my YouTube channel so that hopefully I can support myself doing that, which will allow me to do more live streaming, work on my own music. And I'm going to keep doing sessions, but it's going to be hopefully not so much for money, but just because people I want to work with. Because I just did an album for a band called Rehab, and we live streamed the whole album. We live streamed for 16 days, and some of the live streams were 14 and a half hours long. Like, we streamed the whole thing, and I loved it. It was a lot. And on those streams,
there was a lot of interaction with the audience.
Well, not during those. During those kind of, I call those fly on the wall live streams. So in those, I'll have up to 7 cameras running, and I don't interact with the audience so much. I am just doing what I do. Now, my wife, Kit, she'll be moderating and answering questions. And sometimes if there's a break, I'll stop and answer questions. But the fly on the wall live streams, we just run the cameras. That's a good example there. That was from the Rehab thing. That was just doing a bass part. And I can see Josh, the drummer, sitting on the couch, and we're probably just working it out. And sometimes it's the bassist and the drummer. Maybe the singer's doing his vocals. Maybe we're just having a conversation. And I've got Kit and then a couple other moderators that'll be on there. So if people are asking questions, sometimes we'll show the chat up on the screen, and we're live streaming to Twitch and YouTube at the same time. She'll answer what questions that she can. I have other live streams where I definitely interact with the audience. I'm doing Q&A, or I might be working on some music, but actually answering questions. And then I do some other live streams on my Patreon, which are called deep dives. And those are for certain Patreon memberships where I'll sit here and I'll just talk about kick drummer. We did one this last Sunday. All I did was talk about reverb, and it's a small group of people who are paying. And I'll go into a lot of detail about something, and then they can ask whatever question they want. I had one person on there that wanted to know a lot about the plugin Altiverb, which I use a lot. So we got into a lot of detail on that kind of stuff. So my live streams are very different, but my goal is to grow the YouTube channel and do more of my own music, which appears in a lot of my videos, and then hopefully buy a motorcycle again. That's my goals.
Perfect. Yeah. And do you have an idea of the motorcycle you're looking for?
Well, my last one was a BMW K1200 RS, which was a great bike, but it's big and heavy and expensive to repair. So I think the next one I'm just going to get like I don't know. I've been looking at a Suzuki. There's some Suzukis out there. Probably like some sort of sport touring. I like to drive fast, so I need something that'll take the corners.
Okay. I like the fast, not the long runs.
Oh no, I will ride all day. I just happen to be going fast the whole time.
That's great, Billy. Thank you so much for your time, and it was great to talk to you. And thank you for being here, for being so kind, and it was a lot of fun to learn more from you, to get some tips, and I wish you all the best with
Thanks.
everything
and I appreciate being on here. Thanks for asking me to come on your show.
Yeah, and then let's see if I can help you bringing more Brazilians to your audience, because I think they have a lot of things to learn with you there.
Awesome. I appreciate it.
Okay. So thank you so much, and have a nice week.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Pessoal, obrigado por terem assistido até o final. Espero que vocês tenham curtido, aprendido bastante. Visitem lá o canal do Billy Hume, é muito legal. E se tiverem sugestões de pessoas para eu entrevistar e trazer aí para uma conversa descontraída, sem roteiro, é só mandar aí, manda ali no Instagram do Baixas e Baixarias, que vai ser um prazer, né, tentar entrevistar essa galera aí que vocês têm interesse em conhecer mais, tá bom? Fiquem bem e continuem com o grupo da Ponta dos Dedos. Um abraço.